If you follow me, you know how much I love Fyodor Dostoevsky. So first book is Crime and Punishment. One of the best books of 19th century. I'm no scholar, but it just is. Okay? If you haven't read it, I advise reading it. If you have read it, can't remember it, go back to it. Honestly, it made sense when I read it the second time. I mean, I enjoyed it the second time more. I read it because the first time I read it, I was in school and my English just wasn't what it is now. It's a literature book, so you might find yourself, Googling some of the things. So don't worry about it. Literature books are supposed to be that way, especially when they're translated. As some of you know, this was originally written in Russian. Who am I kidding? I mean, everyone knows who Dostoevsky is, so let's move on. This book centers on a student is called Raskolnikov. If I'm pronouncing it wrong, forgive me, it's a Russian name. Now this fella is quite poor. He's very intelligent young boy. He's studying law and he wants to make himself great. He's not the most modest or humble of character, but he and his friends, they're very deep thinkers. They philosophize quite a lot on what Raskolnikov is focused on. Now because he is poor and begging one meal to next, he comes across and he actually uses an old lady who's a pawnbroker. He notices about this woman that she's a horrible person. She's cunning and she's got this mentally disabled relative, but this old pawnbroker abuses her and is horrible to this mentally ill relative and doesn't give her anything. He calls her a cockroach, a parasite on a society. Like, people get into hard times and need to get money, so they lend things to her and she obviously gets her money back on interest. So he begins to think, would it be correct if you kill this woman, took her money and gave it to the poor or gave it to the society, or even use it for himself to become a great lawyer and then be able to shape and mold the society for the benefit of it all? And is it possible for somebody to legitimately overstep the moral boundaries of society and commit murder if it is for the benefit of majority? So that's the underpinning idea. It's no giveaway, it's no spoiler. He does kill this woman in this book. I mean, the book is 100 years old. You have had enough time to read it, so don't come at me with the review without spoilers. Come on, it's a classic. And the scene when he kills, it's unflinching. It really makes you feel everything this our character feels afterwards, how it affects him. And that's the whole book of it. Once he kills him, then what goes inside his mind, the logic and the reasoning, that's the whole book. It seems to trouble his conscience on one hand, but logically he feels unrepentant because this woman wasn't a great person. He feels like he did it to help the society. And then his life crosses some other characters. Katrina is there. Katrina used to be from a quite well-to-do family, but marrying a drunk gambling man has led her into poverty. Because of that, the daughter Sophia has to sell herself into prostitution to feed her little brothers and sisters and pay rent. And our lead character Raskolnikov watching all of this, but it contracts his way of thinking. It's drastically different from Sophia, who is very much devout Christian, and yet here she is breaking a Christian law, fornication, because she's a prostitute, but she's doing it for the good of others and she's sacrificing herself. And he senses like a kind of a contrast. Raskolnikov, who is sacrificing someone else for the benefit of others, and Sophia does it the other way around. And there are this other characters in the story. As the story progresses, one friend who is quite balanced character, I loved reading about him. So he doesn't know our lead character has murdered someone. No one does, but he's trying to help him work his way through the mental turmoil our character is going through. And then you get into this new character, police inspector, who's on to this lead character. He suspects him of murder, of course, but he can't tie him down to it. But he talks so agreeably to Raskolnikov, and it becomes this unbearable conscious issue because Raskolnikov isn't caught, at least not straight away. Or in fact, does he ever get caught at all? That's the thing, you're always waiting for the entire book and for him to be caught. And Raskolnikov knows the cop knows and he's guilty, but he can't prove it. and Raskolnikov's got to keep up the facade of being innocent and constantly being on that, lookout for things that could give him away. So it's constant, oh my god, what's going to happen, right? It is interesting how the psychology affects him, and this is what this book really does. It's somewhat psychological, and yet it's not invasive narrative. I think the author Dostoevsky was a psychologist, if I'm not wrong. It's very, very powerful piece of work. Like I say, there are a lot of other characters in this uh, book. His sister and his mother are not doing very well financially, so there is a bit of that issue as well. The way the story actually ends is unbelievable, but it's crowd splitter actually, because Dostoevsky wrote an epilogue afterward, which some people like and others, me, not so much. Now I'm going to talk to you about why I think you should read it. It will challenge you. This book is not just a story, and or none of the books on this list are actually. This book is a mind grinder. It wants you to engage, put your mind and morals to work out rights and wrongs, blacks and whites. Dostoevsky himself goes into this book not with a very clear ideology, not with a clear conception or settled opinion of what he thinks. He is testing out an idea, and that idea is sort of like nihilistic attitude. It's very materialistic, nihilistic, but he compares it. So that's what I think. You should read it. That's my review. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye. Subscribe.